Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have such an exciting topic that we're going to be talking about. Moxie is partnering with Chloe Capital today to talk about legal foundations for your startup. A conversation that has so many questions about it, and we don't really talk about enough. We often talk about the business model, about how to make money, about how to solve customer problems, but if you don't get your legal foundation correct, you could be really screwed. So we don't want that to happen to you. So we're really excited. I am the director of operations with Moxie Co-working. We are a co-working space in the South Loop. We also provide programming for entrepreneurs, specifically Black, Latinx, and women founders who are looking to launch, grow, and also scale. So before we kick off with our special speakers, I'm going to bring Adam up, one of our team members, and he's going to share a little bit more about some of our access to capital that we provide. Take it from here, Adam.
Great, thanks, Angela. And as an attorney who is not currently practicing as an attorney, I'm excited to hear this because so often people end up running down really fast down these dark legal tunnels and run into brick walls. So we want you to avoid that if possible. So excited about this event today. Just wanted to also talk about the part of the world of Moxie that I live in, which is Moxie Venture Partners. What we do is we expand kind of the end of the funnel. We think it's the funding end of the funnel. And we get people introduced to entrepreneurship up front. We bring them through maybe non-dilutive, maybe some grant funding, all sorts of potentially even loan products. And then we also try to serve them at the end where they need growth capital or they might even need venture capital. So Moxie Venture Partners operates really primarily along three different lines. Mostly, we've got an angel network that's in operation. We have an accelerator program, and then we also do a supplier diversity effort. So with businesses, not only kind of in the Chicago Midwest, but really nationwide. So really excited about the opportunities that we can help to bring to Black, brown, and women-led businesses. So again, this topic is so critical. Thank you so much to Chloe Capital for participating. And I'll be back, I think, at the end to deal with comments and questions. And I'm excited to hear what's in the middle.
Hi, thank you, Adam. Again, thank you so much, Adam. Thank you, Angela, with Moxie, for tagging me and asking me if I wanted to participate in this. Absolutely, the answer will always be yes, because I love being in a position and have an opportunity to educate aspiring founders. So I just want to welcome everyone. Welcome to Real Talk, picking the correct legal foundation for your startups. Your startup. I am Monica Ramirez. I'm the serve as the Chief Experience Officer and partner at Chloe Capital. So I just wanted to also note that we are live streaming to Facebook, YouTube, and LinkedIn. So please, throughout the presentation, enter your questions in the comments box, and we will definitely address them at the end if they hadn't been addressed already from the presentation. I so frequently see so many people on social media teaching how to start a business, posting about different legal formations that you should have for your business. And I love that people are sharing their knowledge and their experience. It does take a really long time and a lot of effort to learn from trial and error how to start a business and which formation you should do and how to transfer your business into different formations after it has been started. So I wanted to also jump on board and allow you to and enable you to hear from an investor, me, and a lawyer who I tagged, who actually does this day in and day out for her clients. So what we're actually going to learn about is this. Stay on and watch if you are interested and need to learn about the differences between the different company formations. We're going to deep dive into actual documents that you will need for your legal formation. We're going to uncover which formation is best for your company, your startup, your idea, your venture. We're going to really get into and get an inside scoop of what formations are required when you are seeking funding and what type of company that you should be starting or you should currently have that will qualify you for different type of funding. And then we're also on the way going to hear a really fun case study of that will bring all of this together. So before we get into that, I want to introduce myself and my background and tell you how I got here. My name is Manika Ramirez. I serve as the Chief Experience Officer at Chloe Capital. Chloe Capital, we are a movement-driven impact venture capital firm that invests in women-led technology companies from all around the world. In addition to investing with a diversity, and inclusion lens, Chloe Capital, we partner with institutions and foundations and corporations to host large-scale programs for female founders and investors, where at the end we invest, a minimum $100,000 into a female-led company. Since launching in 2017, we have traveled across the U.S., making investments in nearly a dozen impact companies. We currently have a portfolio of 11 companies, and that portfolio is valued at approximately $130 million. Each of our companies, they are disrupting large industries, including education, health, construction, and very soon climate tech. So I had a very interesting journey in getting here. So I actually was born and raised in Chicago, but I attended Rochester Institute of Technology in upstate New York, where I obtained my degree in information technology. After graduating, I worked in the industry, the IT industry for many years, where during that time, I've always had my own business. I've come from a family of entrepreneurs. And one of the things is I self-subscribed, gave myself a mission of trying to help tech entrepreneurs in upstate New York, help them build and grow their businesses. And I started that off through doing large-scale conferences for these tech entrepreneurs, where I met my partners at Chloe Capital and started to really understand and learn about the entire investment world and the venture capital world, and jumped on board. So since starting a family, I moved back to Chicago, is where I sit now, with my husband and my 3-year-old daughter, and then just focusing on Chloe Capital as a firm and working to really move more capital into the hands of female founders and minority founders. All right, so that's me. I'll be operating from as an entrepreneur, but also in an investor side to answer questions at the end. Our main speaker is her name is Dea Bean. She's an associate at Thompson Hine. I'm so incredibly grateful that she agreed to hop on here with me to share this presentation. It's going to be wonderful. Hi, Dea.
Hi. How are you?
I am good. So I will actually let you introduce yourself. I just wanted to first mention that Dea is an associate at Thompson Hine, working in the firm's early stage and emerging companies practice group. And your experience is insane. It ranges from really advising startup founders, entrepreneurs, and small business owners regarding formation to day-to-day governance, and venture capital financing. So go ahead, please take it away. I'm so excited for everyone to see this presentation.
Okay, so before I begin, just a brief introduction. My name is Dea Bean. I sit in the New York office for Thompson Hine, but we have offices all across the United States. I don't know if this matters. I went to Howard University for undergrad, University of Baltimore for law school, and was really impacted about working with clients of color, so Black, Latinx, and other people of color, and other quote unquote marginalized groups. So that is where my passion lies. And you will probably see in my presentation that I am obnoxiously millennial. So I don't know. I don't have anything else to say about myself. I'm horrible talking about myself. So let's start the presentation. I'm going to share my screen. Okay. All right. Sorry guys, give me 1 second while I try to figure out how I can make this full screen because I have not done this in a while. Okay. All right, so the name of this presentation is Starting Up Right, Setting the Legal Foundation for Your Startup. So if you guys are familiar, there is a show on HBO called Silicon Valley, which I think is pretty accurate to describe the venture capital and startup process. If you haven't seen it, I would recommend logging into Hulu or borrowing someone else's, like everyone else does in my family, and watch a few episodes. I don't know how many seasons it is, but it's a pretty accurate show. Okay, so these are our topics. Today we're going to talk about corporate organization, as Maniko said. So LLCs, C Corps, S Corps. I don't have it mentioned here, but we can briefly talk about partnerships and sole proprietorships. Next, we're going to talk about technology and intellectual property, which essentially is the meat and bread of what any investor is looking for and is investing in. And the last thing we're talking about is early stage financing. And I use the money, power, respect, even though it's not DMX's line, it's Little Kim's line. I feel like it's equally as important. And I like to attribute to DMX, but it's not an apt tribute. Okay. Let's go to the next slide. So when I like to do these presentations, I like to give case studies. So our case study is going to be called Jumpman sneakers, which are really Jordan classics ones because these are my favorite sneakers. These are not actually called Jumpman sneakers. So if anyone's affiliated with Nike or Michael Jordan, don't sue me because I don't have any money. But we're going to be using what I call Jumpman sneakers as our case study to describe the topics that we discussed today. So the founders of Jumpman sneakers are myself and Michael Jordan. If you guys ever seen The Last Dance, I think they tie a little bit about the Jordan ones in the show. It's a great show if you haven't seen it. Anyway, so Jumpman sneakers is going to be incorporated as a Delaware C Corp, and we'll talk about that later with a foreign domestication in New York. We'll talk about that later as well. The intellectual property that we have is a design patent, a trademark, a utility patent, and a copyright. All of those we will talk about later in the presentation. And essentially what Jumpman sneakers are is a sneaker with a sole that uses traditional Chinese medicine to measure body health. So full disclosure, I made this up. I have no idea how this actually works. I am just a believer in acupuncture. So I don't know if I'm being accurate. And if you have like a degree in traditional Chinese medicine, or I don't know, probably everybody has more experience in this. Don't believe anything I say about the technology because honestly, I really don't know. I am just a lawyer. Okay, so the first slide is you're probably doing it wrong, and that's okay. We'll find out together. A lot of the issues that I see a lot of startups face comes from the formation phase and the beginning stages. For example, one of my clients that I'm working with, we're doing a corporate overhaul because they started off wrong, and that's okay because typically with Black and people of color founders, they don't have the legal capital or the money to kind of start up right. So that's why we're doing this today, to help you guys figure out how to start up right, so that by the time it comes for a big investor to invest in your company and they're doing diligence, you're not having to pay a lawyer a lot of money to fix some of the mistakes that you made in the beginning. Okay, so let's talk about organization, and not the Marie Kondo kind. If you guys know who Marie Kondo is, she's fantastic, but I do not abide by her life rules because that takes a lot of time. Okay, so the things that we're going to be talking about here are C Corps, S Corps, limited liability companies. I'm going to briefly talk about the other two entities that I mentioned, which is a sole proprietorship and a partnership, but briefly. So let's talk about a C Corp. C Corps are what I do every day. That is the bread and butter of corporate law for startups. It's what most investors are looking for. And it's essentially the one that you should have. If you have a limited liability company or some other entity, you can convert it to a C Corp. No problem. I mean, well, no problem for me, but like it would be a problem. It's not a problem. It's just a little bit expensive. So I think that if you are starting off and you're like, what entity should I choose? I would say a C Corp. If you have a limited liability company, that's not something that is uncommon, and many people do have them. Okay, so to form a C Corp, you have to file a piece of paper with a state, and it's called a certificate of incorporation. On the paper, it just lists out the name of the company, how many shares the company is authorized to issue. If you're in Delaware, it's called stock. We use them interchangeably, and I will probably use them interchangeably here. Where the company is located, things like that. It's just to let the state know that this is an actual company that's being formed. And for a limited liability company, you just file articles of organization, which are essentially the same document. It's just called different things for different entity types. Now, the owners of a corporation are its stockholders. So, oh my God, I used this the last time I gave this presentation. I don't know if you guys remember, like here's the church, here's the steeple, open it up, and there's the people. Okay, so the corporation is going to be the church. The people who own the church, and I guess that's not actually accurate, but those are the stockholders. Those are the people who own the corporation. In a limited liability company, it's called the members. Essentially the same, except members don't get stock. What they get is called interests, which is kind of like stock, but not really. There are some rules that differentiate the two. The management of a C Corp and an S Corp is managed by its board of directors. And those are, I'm sure people have talked about board of directors. People talk about having a personal board of directors as well. It's just the people who help manage the company and make decisions based on performance and day-to-day decisions. So for an LLC, those can be managers or members. Doesn't really matter as long as someone is taking care of the LLC. What the difference is between the two is a limited liability company has to have members. Well, a C Corp has to have stockholders, but a limited liability company is dependent on its members more so than a C Corp or an S Corp is, dependent on their stockholders. Raising capital. So this is probably why you all are here anyway, but raising capital for a C Corp is selling stock or shares to investors, where a limited liability company is selling membership interests or units. Those are the tangible descriptions of ownership. So for example, in our Jumpman example, like my sneakers are mad dirty, I'm sorry. But in our Jumpman example, so me and MJ own Jumpman 50-50. So that means if I formed Jumpman Corp, whatever I said it was called, in Delaware as a C Corp, and we split the equity. So we formed it with 2 million shares and we split the shares between the two of us, then I get 1 million shares and Michael Jordan gets 1 million shares. If it's a limited liability company that we also formed in Delaware, I would get for LLCs, it's like a pie. So you split the pie. So I would have 50% of the membership interest and Michael Jordan would have 50% of the membership interest. Or if we're doing units, which is kind of the same as stock, I would say we have 2 million units. I have 1 million units and Michael Jordan has another 1 million units. That's probably a little bit more confusing than I wanted it to be, but we're not going to focus on that here. So formalities. Formalities are like the rules and regulations that states impose upon corporations, limited liability companies, and the like. And so for corporations, there's a lot more formalities that have to be met. For example, some states require corporations to hold meetings, to have annual reporting. It looks like my little thing broke off there, but you have to have consent to do things. You have to ask the stockholders to sign documents or resolutions. So there are a lot more formalities that have to be had versus a limited liability company, which is kind of like, you have meetings, sign a document, that's it. have resolutions. Their limited liability companies tend to be a little bit more lenient in what they require of the members and the managers. So the governing documents are going to be bylaws and shareholders agreements for corporations and an operating agreement for limited liability companies. What the bylaws and the operating agreement do is essentially just set out the rules for governing, how we're going to handle if someone leaves the company, how we handle appointing officers like the CEO or the CTO. How do we do all that? That's going to be in your bylaws or operating agreement, which we call the operative agreements. It depends on who you're talking to. Older people call it different things. And a shareholders agreement is an agreement between the shareholders themselves. Typically, you don't need you don't need shareholders agreements if you have bylaws, but some people do both, which is fine. If that's what you want to do, that's what you want to do. So real quick, we'll talk about sole proprietorships and partnerships. So sole proprietorship, these are not on the slide, so you can enjoy Marie Kondo like flashing on your screen a million times. But sole proprietorships are if I just started working one day. So I like waist beads, right? And let's just say I started a waist bead company and I was just throwing like little beads on strings. I'm sure it's more intensive than that, but like, what do I know? So I wanted to start selling these things, but I don't want to set up a company. I don't want to have a separate bank account. I don't want to have to do all this stuff. So I just start selling. I'm a sole prop. Now, if me and my friend Janice, I don't have a friend named Janice, so that's probably good. If me and my friend Janice decide, okay, let's partner together. Like you provide the beads, I'll put the string, you do half the work, I do half the work. Then we have a partnership. So we just started working together. There's no corporate formalities there. I don't have to have a separate bank account. I don't have to really do anything. We can just start working. We could have a partnership agreement between the both of us, and we could register with the state if we wanted to, but it doesn't really matter. Now, if you're working as a partnership, I would suggest that you have an agreement between you and your partner. But honestly, these things are kind of like laissez-faire, what you want to do. The reason why we have structures like C Corps and limited liability companies and S Corps is because it provides the owners protection. We call it the corporate veil, which sounds very mystic, but there's actually no other name for it. It's like a law school term and it sticks with you until you die. So essentially what it means is that if someone was to sue Jumpman, right? With me and because of like the sole fell off of a shoe and it's caught on fire like the Samsung phone. If that was the case and they were to sue us and we were not a corporation or limited liability company, me and Michael Jordan would be on the hook. They would be suing Daya Bean and Michael Jordan. Now, if we have a C Corp, they would just sue the C Corp. And we're kind of protected behind this corporate veil. See, like the veil. We're protected by this veil and nothing really can get through to us to attack. Now, I'm saying that conceptually. In Delaware, as of today, I suppose, because I have not heard it, there has not been a case where someone has successfully broken the corporate veil. Now, there are exceptions to that. For example, if you don't follow those corporate formalities, it could be a case made that the corporation isn't properly functioning. Therefore, the corporate veil can go away. Or if you're mishandling money. So it's important to differentiate the money that you receive having a corporation from your personal monies. So you have to pay yourself. So what I would suggest doing and what most of our clients do is they get an EIN number after the corporation or LLC is formed. Then they go to a bank and they take all of these documents with them and they say, we want a bank account. And so every single transaction or occurrence that they do it through that corporation. And they also pay themselves from that corporation. That is just keeping all of your ducks in a row. And also it helps you financially and with your accountant, I'm sure. Okay, so next slide. So this is Jumpman. I couldn't put the music. I don't think the music is playing, so no. But Jumpman. Okay, so these are what some of the documents look like after you've formed a company. So to the left, we have amended and restated bylaws. I don't know whose bylaws these are. I don't know what iStar Inc. is. if you own iStar Inc. and you're happening to, I'm sorry, it was on Google and maybe you shouldn't do that. So these are bylaws, which these are kind of like simple, but it just kind of gives you a little bit of information about how the company is going to be governed. The next thing on below is the Stockholders Agreement, which is for Wakefern Food Corp. Oh, they have actual names? Okay, no, they don't have actual names. Okay, but this is the Stockholders Agreement. It looks like a legal document. It is a legal document. I know it's old. But this is going to govern the relationship between me and Michael Jordan if we had one. The one in the middle is a cap table, and this is for some company. I don't know. Again, this is going to help us organize how we issue stock if we're in Delaware or shares if we're anywhere else. Most states are now calling it stock because everyone follows Delaware. Like I said earlier, we formed in Delaware, so this is going to be our certificate of incorporation. And we know it's legit because we have this little seal here that tells us that we are actually a corporation in Delaware. Okay. So why would I organize as a C Corp in Delaware? And the simple answer is because of venture capital and tax benefits. So C Corp, investors really like C Corps. It helps with taxation and how they get paid dividends. It's really important to them. And honestly, it's kind of a default. S Corps are a little bit more complicated and you have to actually file with the IRS if you want to specialize as an S Corp. And in Delaware, tax benefits. Now, I say that and it's kind of archaic because most states now have kind of adopted Delaware's rules. For example, I'm originally from Baltimore, which is in Maryland, and Maryland's corporation rules kind of copy Delaware's, because everyone and every big company is incorporated in Delaware. Apple, I think, is incorporated in Delaware, even though they're headquartered somewhere else. And that brings me to another point. We'll go back to that. I don't know. I have Apple products here. I'm pretty sure Nike is incorporated in Delaware, but they, have businesses other places. When I said in the previous slide, let's see if I can go back without like screwing anything up, that we are incorporated in Delaware, but we're foreign in New York. What that basically means is that all of our corporation's house is in Delaware, but we don't do any work there. I live in New York, so I do all the work in New York. We'll pretend that Michael Jordan lives in New York too. So because we live in New York, we need to let the state of New York know that we are running a business. Even though it's not a New York company, New York still has to tax us for selling things or conducting business in its state. So it's a simple form that you file after you're incorporated in Delaware. And you just tell the state of New York, hey, we're here, we're doing business, like tax us maybe, like hopefully not, but that's essentially what it's for. All right, so let's see if I can get us back. So those are the reasons why you do a C Corp for investors and you incorporate in Delaware, because it is what it is, honestly, at this point. I would say it would because the law is different now. I mean, it would be because the law is different in Delaware than any other states, but most states have adopted Delaware Corporation and LLC law. So now it's just everyone's there. Delaware court system is created. Well, not their court system, but the Delaware courts understand corporations and LLCs a little bit better than most states do, and most states are still catching up. But I wouldn't do it anywhere other than Delaware. All right, so technology and intellectual property, and this is my favorite part of literally anything, is intellectual property. So let's talk about the different types of intellectual property. So there's copyrights, which covers original works of authorship. So let's think art, music, poetry, computer software, etc. So I'm looking around my house because I'm trying to find something, because usually I have another prop for this, but I have this this magazine called Violet with, I think this is Tamika Mallory on the cover. It's just really old. So inside of the magazine, there's words here. These words are going to be covered by copyright. There's pictures here, which are also covered by copyright. There's original works here throughout this whole magazine that's going to be covered by copyright. Similarly to your phone, the computer software and computer code in your phone is going to be covered by copyright. Anything that's original works of authorship. Lawyers like to use these intense words. I don't know why, but that's a copyright. If you guys hear anything, I live in Brooklyn and it's Brooklyn, so I apologize in advance, but I just heard some things. Okay, so trademarks. Trademarks cover anything that is attributable to a certain brand. So I would think slogans, colors, marks, etc. So let's think Just Do It. That's trademarked by Nike. This little R on my sneakers, that's a trademark. That's a registered trademark. That's why we have the little R that means registered. I'm sure, like, is it really called Jumpman? But I'm sure the Jumpman here is also trademarked by Nike. Christian Louboutin, the red bottoms, that color red is covered by trademark. If you guys are interested, there's a really cool blog called fashionlaw.com. And what the author does is distills a lot of cases that deal with fashion law. For example, the Lil Nas X versus Nike dispute. She covered that. And it's quite interesting because it was a trademark dispute. So those are things that can be covered by trademarks. Now, patents, there are 3 different types of patents. Utility patents, which is for like anything mechanical. So if we'll talk about the next slide on the shoe, but like how the TV works. I'm looking at my TV, but how my TV is able to switch from a television to a piece of art would probably be covered by a utility patent. A design patent, which is also my favorite thing, covers the design of the shoe or the design of my ring or the design of my iPhone, which has text messages on it, so we'll ignore that. But anything that is more design heavy is for design patents. And the last one is plant patents. I have not seen one. I don't know if if anyone has ever filed a plant patent, but it's usually dealing with reconfiguration of agriculture. The reason why patents are so difficult is because everything has to be novel. It cannot be a copy of something else. Copyright and trademarks can be derivatives, so they can be derived or taken from something else, but patents have to be novel. This has to be a new thing. So for example, I think I'm wrong, but let's, if we go back to trademarks, there's a concept called trade dress, which is similar to design patents. Apple has trade dress protection over their stores, and I think they have a design patent on their bags. So it's kind of complicated, and usually only companies like Apple and Coca-Cola and some of those big companies can really afford to stretch their legal muscles on those. So the things to think about with respect to intellectual property is federal registration of copyrights and trademarks. So for a copyright, if I was to draw like a smiley face on my hand, that would be copywritten without me even filing for federal registration because it's an original work of authorship. It doesn't require filing. If I want to get federal protection, so if someone else drew the same exact smiley face on my hand, which is probably a horrible example, but we'll just use it because that's what I got, then I could sue them if I had federal protection. I just have to register with the Copyright Office, which I think is in the Library of Congress. Trademarks, I would suggest that they be registered. I think there's this concept, you can register a trademark once it becomes attributable to a certain brand. So for example, if you think of, I said Just Do It earlier, quench your thirst, you're gonna probably, is that Sprite? I think that's Sprite. It could be Gatorade, but like, let's pretend it's Sprite because I don't really know, I don't drink soda. But if it's Sprite, right, that's the first thing I think of. So that means it's attributable to a certain brand. Even though Sprite is owned by Coca-Cola, Sprite still owns the mark to that. That is how brands get recognition, and they don't want, or the Federal Trademark Office doesn't want someone else to be able to copy that or take that goodwill from someone. So they have this federal registration for trademarks. So in order to apply for a trademark, you have to have that brand recognition. But all is not lost. You can file what's called an intent to use, which is an application that says to the Trademark Office, hey, we are intending to use this mark in commerce, meaning we're going to tell people about it and people are going to be able to attribute it to a certain brand. Once that happens, then you can register with the trademark office. It's not as intense. Don't compare yourself to Sprite or just do it because like they're a multinational company. But you just got to have some recognition so that somebody can say, oh, I think I've seen that company before. Patent applications are intensely expensive, but that's how you can get a patent. Invention assignment agreements. The reason why I don't talk about patents is because I don't do patents. And I took like, aside from like a semester at Howard in science, I don't know what I'm talking about with respect to like filing a patent application. Usually you have to have a lawyer to do it because it's an intensive process. And it can take years. So an invention assignment agreement is something that you can do now. So if you have a company and you hire a freelancer, you want them to assign all of the rights to the work that they created for the company to you. Or if you have an employee, they should fill out an invention assignment agreement to assign all of the rights and whatever they create to the company rather than them owning it, because that is the bread and butter of the company. IP assignment agreements are pretty much the same thing. It's usually for outside people, and work for hire does the same thing. These are all three different types of agreements. Invention assignment, I think you would think of as like employees, like at startups, you usually just fill them out when you're an employee there, like your first day in your offer letter. IP assignment agreement can mean like you did the work 5 years ago and they're like, well, we want it. So then you assign it to the company. And the work for hire is if I hired a videographer to shoot promo for my company, I would have them fill out a work for hire agreement because I hired them to work for me. It all sounds like simple, and it kind of is for the most part, but it can be a bit confusing. Okay, so here is my favorite slide. We're going to talk about how this all applies to the Jumpman sneaker. Okay, let's do it. Like I said earlier in the beginning, I don't know anything about creating things or traditional Chinese medicine outside of my acupuncturist. So we're just going to pretend that this is all accurate and you're not going to check me for being wrong. Okie dokie. So here's our Jumpman sneaker, this is, I think these are clean. Let's do it this side. This is the one on the shoe. So we have the trademark on the name of the shoe for the logo. So we'll pretend that they're called Jumpman instead of Nike Air. We have on the inside of the shoe, well, let's do a trade dress. We have the overall design on the shoe with the design patent. So the red on the inside, we won't look at that because it's probably gross. The way that the zipper moves up and down the shoe, how this tongue flaps out because it's not a lace-up shoe. So that's going to be on the overall design of the shoe. It'll break down the sole, the leather material used, how it's stretched over a frame of the shoe. All of that's going to be covered by my design patent. So the utility patent is going to cover the special sensors that we developed to measure pulse and nerves on the foot. So I don't even know if these are sensors, but I copied it off of something that Amazon was selling and put them all over. But we're going to pretend that this is accurate, and we're going to pretend that this is the sole of the shoe. And we have a utility patent on the design of it. We're going to pretend this is novel and no one's ever done this before, or there's not something that's insanely close to it. So we have a utility patent on those. And the software that helps the sensors communicate with an app that we develop is covered by copyrights, which is a lot of intellectual property, but that is how we protect ourselves from people who would be infringing on our rights to own our product. Okay, so if you can hear the music, it's money, power, respect. So we're going to talk about early financing. Money, power, respect are the keys of life. And I said at the bottom, the great DMX was also on the song, but you heard the arf arf, so I feel like I did him justice. Let's move on to the next slide. So we're going to talk about Series Seed and Series A financing. In venture capital, there are multiple stages of financing. There's your early stage financing, which is Series Seed and Series A. And there's later on stages like Series B, C, and D, and then you can have extensions of those rounds. But we're going to just talk really briefly about Series Seed and Series A, because that's kind of the world where I live and where I work. Okay, so like I said, we're gonna think about venture capital as money, power, and respect, because those are typically the terms that a term sheet will fall under. And I'm gonna explain it. Respect really doesn't, like, I added it because of the song, but I think it's something that you should consider, and we'll talk about why. So the money part, the economics, is how much money, how much the company is being valued, which is your pre-money. So the company is valued at $2 million, right? That is your pre-money amount. The amount of the investment plus the valuation of the company is post-money. So if Roy Ayers, I'm looking at an album, Roy Ayers investment company invest $5 million into my startup, and it's worth $2 million. So we have $5 million investment from Roy Ayers. The post money is going to be $7 million. We have the option pool size. An option is what you can give, stock options, what you can give to employees or people who help you. So like advisors or third parties who help contribute to the overall health of the startup. We can give them some stock options, and sometimes investors will determine how big the pool size is. It can be, I think it's like between 10 to 15%. Liquidation preferences, which we'll talk about in the next slide. Participation rights, dividends, and anti-dilution. We'll talk about those in the next slide too. So the power part, money, power, is if they have a seat on the board of directors, if there are voting provisions, like does Roy Ayers get double the votes, which I've never seen, but it's possible, or does Roy Ayers, you can't make a decision without Roy Ayers' investment. These are these types of power provisions. Protective provisions, like you have to get Roy Ayers' investments consent before you do X, Y, and Z. So those are those types of provisions that fall under power. And the last one is respect. So like I said, money, power, and respect are the keys of life. But respect is like negotiating in good faith, and picking the right VC for you, I think, is insanely crucial, because you could have a VC who sits on your board of directors and only makes decisions for the best of the VC and not for the company. And I think that is insanely important, and you should do your research on your would-be investors and see if you can actually work with them. These people are in a relationship with you, and they will be in a relationship with you for quite some time. Okay, so this is a lot of information, but I tried to distill it into a smaller term sheet. So in the previous slide, you can see like in the back, it says like Series A. That is what a typical term sheet looks like. So I tried to distill some of the provisions from there. So like pre-money is the value of the company prior to the investment, and I said it was $4 million. The post-money is the pre-money plus the amount of the investment. So I think the amount of investment was $2 million, so it's $6 million. Types of security is what we're selling, and securities are just the stock, or if it was an LLC, units. So these are going to be called Series A preferred stock, which gives stockholders certain rights over holders of common stock. So when you have a corporation, a C or S Corp, we have common stock and we have preferred stock. Common stock is what you automatically are given. Preferred stock is stock that you give out to investors because it's preferred. It's more, you get better benefits and you get certain rights over common stock. So dividends, like I can put this in a term sheet that holders of preferred stock will receive 8% dividend whenever the board of directors decides that it's appropriate. So basically that means like if we decide every quarter that we want to give stockholders a certain amount of money, then we could do that. Like when I was younger, my mom used to work for Bell Atlantic, which was Verizon before it was Verizon. And we owned stock in Verizon because she was an employee, and she would get dividends every like year, and it would be like $20. It wouldn't be that much, but that's still a dividend. Liquidation is if the company dissolves or winds up. So if the company just closes and the state knows that it closes, the preferred stockholders will receive one time the original issue price, which is what the investor paid per share. So like they'll receive one times, I don't know the math on this, so I'm gonna make up an arbitrary number. 48 cents is what the investor pays per share. So one times that 48 cents plus any unpaid dividends. And then the term sheet will spell out the terms of what a liquidation is considered. Anti-dilution is if the company issues additional stock at a price that's less than what the preferred stockholders paid. The preferred stockholders do not lose their value. So their stock price would be adjusted to help them keep the value of the stock. So if I'm Roy Ayers and I invested $2 million at 48 cents per share, and I'm not doing the math, so I'm going to make up a number. I got 1 million shares of this company. And Solange Investment comes in at a later round and she's only paying 30 cents per share. They're going to adjust the amount of stock that I own so that I still keep my advantage. Board seats, just like if I can elect a person to the board here, we said that they can elect one person to be the director to vote on behalf of all of the preferred stockholders. And then stock options here will reserve a certain percentage of 18% for employees, executives, and consultants. And those are kind of some of the terms of a term sheet. Trust me, they can be really intense or they could not be. This is kind of what you would see in a Series A financing, which is a round that happens after the seed series. So I'm not a businessman, I'm a businessman. I like to include this slide because there is no good substitute for a lawyer. And I'm not saying that because I am a lawyer. I would say even if I wasn't a lawyer and if I had my own startup, I would hire a lawyer. I wouldn't rely on myself. I think that there are things that, when we are looking at the forest for the trees, we're not focused on the things that could happen. And a lawyer does that for you. So whomever you can talk to, if your cousin's a lawyer, that's great. If your cousin's a fake lawyer, like one of my cousins, I would not suggest talking to that person. I would find someone that you trust, who you've worked with in the past or you've developed a relationship with, or if you just even talked to help you navigate this space as a founder. And I think we're at the last slide. This is my thanks, let's link slide. It has my name, Day Bean, my address, so you can stalk me. You can text me if you have any questions. You can email me, or you can hit this link that takes you to my group's website. So I think that's it for me, and I think we're going to move on to something else.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. As usual, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and everything with us. So before we get into some of the questions, what I wanted to do is really get into some examples of really hot, trending companies right now and understand what you as a lawyer would suggest to these entrepreneurs about some of the different things. And then I'll say if it's a type of company that we would invest in from a venture capital firm. So first one, what is a hot one that you kind of been seeing all around? And I'm
on Insta a lot. Like a lot, like an obscene amount, like I would think it. So like they'll get advertisements, and I noticed that, I don't know if it's because I started to eat healthy this year or last year, but I get a lot of like health food advertisements. And some of these companies are like, I don't know, like supplemental companies. I get a lot of those, which are healthcare industry specific stuff. And I don't even know if they're like real, like, legit. But there's a lot of them because a lot of people are trying to get into their summer bodies, especially since the United States Brooklyn is open. And so if Brooklyn is open, I'm pretty sure the rest of the country is opening up. And because of that, people are trying to regulate their health and get their stuff together. Adam said Clubhouse, which is another thing. Clubhouse is very interesting, and I have thoughts on Clubhouse, but we can talk about it if you want. I got thoughts, but Clubhouse is also, well, it was hot. I don't know if it's still hot. I signed on a Clubhouse for like a month and then got off, but that was just me.
I don't know. So yeah, Clubhouse is really interesting, but the health supplemental vitamins, that's another interesting one. That's a tough one. So what I would probably say with that is, people really got to be careful because there's this whole trend of just kind of reselling different products that already exist. And so some of the ones that I see on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or anything like that is photo booths. Those are hot now. So with photo booths, yeah. So I guess I must have clicked on something that made it seem like I was interested in starting a photo booth company. Now, every time I go on any platform, I get an advertisement of, let me teach you how to start a photo booth company. So with photo booths, is that something that an investor would invest in? So if you have if you're starting a company, and so what I would say is, if you're starting a photo booth company where you're renting out your photo booth for, $700 plus the event, that's amazing. You can have and grow a company where you can make a lot of money, and that would be considered a lifestyle business. And that is something that, as an investor, as a venture capitalist, we wouldn't necessarily invest in that. However, if say you are the company that makes the photo booths and you're able to get all of those different type of patents, like utility patents and patents that you just went over, then that's something a bit more appealing. Or what would be even more appealing is, say I'm a company and I don't just rent out my photo booths. I make the photo booths. I also make an app for people to use if they want to reserve the photo booths or if they want to manage their photo booths. Then that definitely becomes another company that we can invest in, because we can see how you can get those X multiple returns fairly quickly.
Yeah. Well, I think one of the other things I see a lot are mink eyelashes and weave. I see that all over in my Discover or whatever page is called on Instagram. I don't have TikTok because I feel like I'm too old for that. But and I don't know what I'm doing, but I see it all the time in there, and I'm always that is so interesting.
I love that one.
Yeah.
So,
as a VC, do you think that's a thing? Would you invest in a weave company or a mink eyelashes company?
So yeah, so I love that one, and I'm glad you brought that one up, because my little sister, and I say little because she's much younger than me, 11 years younger than me. So she actually has her own eyelash install business, and it has really taken off. She really got into it. She purchased all of the equipment and everything to build her studio, and she does installs. And so I come from a family of entrepreneurs, and my cousin, me, we all, my grandma stemmed from her 40 years of having a home business. But she does this, she, makes good money. It could be potential to blow up to be a really great lifestyle business. But that is something that, as an investor, as a venture capital investor, we would not invest in. However, what could turn that into an venture backable company is, you mentioned mink eyelashes, which I know that already exists. I probably need to get some because good eyelashes. But anyway, so say if my sister, her name is Miana, say if she goes, okay, I'm doing this and I'm noticing that the mink eyelashes, they don't stay on as long. So let me tag some scientists, or let me go in the lab or something like that, using her degree and her background, and I come up with rabbit eyelashes. I don't know. I come up with some different type of materials to make these eyelashes that will last a long time. And then I, patent that, and I brand that, and I start selling those eyelashes to the masses of people, right? Then that becomes a product that we would be able to see a large return over a short period of time, and potentially an exit. So an exit in acquisition from a larger company, like the people who created the Minga Lash company, or an IPO. So that's how you can turn that one into from a non-venture backable venture investable company to an investable one. As well as I just thought about t-shirts. Everyone has t-shirts.
Everyone has t-shirts. I have t-shirts. Like everybody has
Well, I mean, everyone is like, well, I shouldn't say
no,
everyone.
like design t-shirts.
Designing t-shirts.
Yeah, everyone's doing that. Or sweatshirts.
Because and they have the, like, you know, the little heat press things and everything like that. So again, that's another one that is wonderful. I have like friends who have been like hustling for many years and building like a brand of t-shirts and just killing it and making, you know, a great living off of this lifestyle business. But that is something that wouldn't, like, you know, if you go and you buy a heat press and, you know, you're designing t-shirts with logos and stuff, we normally wouldn't invest in that as a venture capitalist. There are other type of investors who would invest in these different things, or like crowdfunding, which we really didn't get into. We'll probably have to have another whole session about that. How you raise money from non-traditional, like just, you know, trying to go to venture capitalists. There's so many other ways to raise money. But just having a heat press and making t-shirts, probably not. However, if you have, say, I made a t-shirt that can monitor my heart rate, or I made a t-shirt out of a certain material. Like, I just met a company that they make shoes out of like fruit, like apple skins and stuff like that, and so they have a patent on that, right? So like these sustainability things, or my t-shirts are sustainable, and you're building a brand off of that. That could become something that is venture backable.
Okay. Is Jumpman sneakers venture backable? Would you invest in me?
Your example.
Don't do it yet. Don't do it yet. I'm gonna be filing suit with Gaia, because clearly I've also.
I don't have any money. I don't know if you saw the light switch without a cover. I don't have it.
That would be, yeah. So Jumpman, your example would be a venture backable company, not from like my company, because we do in technology investments, but there are investors and there are VC firms who invest in you know, products or food products or whatever different type of products. So that's something else. Again, we'll have to have a whole another webinar on how to reach to get investors. But yeah.
Yeah, this is so interesting, and we definitely, I love. We really should have another one on, especially on crowdfunding, because I do feel like we've done one within Moxie. We'd love to talk to both of you about that, because I think it's such a helpful new platform too, that people are you know, starting to learn about and need to learn more about, and it's only going to help. But this is so interesting. There's a couple questions that were out there that I fielded from some of our different platforms that I want to make sure we get to. One of the first ones was, what's the first step I should take if I think I've started my company wrong? Like, what's step one for, I think I've started it wrong, what do I do?
I mean, that's a difficult question, because without actually knowing how you believe you started it wrong, I can't answer that question, right? We can say, like, one of the examples that I get a lot is that somebody formed a C Corp in Delaware and they get a bill for $17,000, and they're like, holy shit, like I got to pay $17,000. It's because they didn't file something with the state of Delaware saying, oh, this is an asset-based payment. So you only pay for what you incurred, like your assets. You don't pay for that. So if you made no money that year, your bill might be like $30. I don't know. I don't know, but it could be something like that. I think it's difficult in a vacuum to know what the first step is to fix it, because my answer is going to be talk to a corporate lawyer, and that's probably not the answer you want to hear. You want me to say, oh, you gotta just do this, and I don't have the answers for that. I think the first step is, okay, put your hand up. Hey, I formed this. I did X, Y, and Z. Even if it's talking to somebody, there are lawyers who are on like I think they're like apps or websites where you could just hire a lawyer for an hour to just look at something. Those are also worthwhile as well. They won't be affiliated with the firm, so there's not like that backing, there's not like that insurance that you get, but it's still some legal advice. And so I think the first thing you should do is to be like, I think I did this wrong. I'm going to talk to a lawyer, even if it's for an hour, even if it's like $50 an hour. It's make sure they're a corporate lawyer, of course, but they'll be able to help you figure out what you did wrong, or if you didn't do anything wrong. It's a very simple process. So 9 times out of 10, you probably didn't do it wrong. But on that one chance that you did, you should probably talk to a lawyer.
Yeah.
And also, I would just throw in there, just Google if your area has volunteer legal services. That is an organization that is in some areas that will, just give you volunteer a lawyer, corporate lawyer to help you for an hour.
Yeah, I was a volunteer lawyer in Baltimore. And so I was affiliated with a very, very large firm, and I still was volunteering my weekends, but I worked with artists. But it's still a chance for someone to be like, oh, let's just see, it's free. And all I did was like, I gave them homework and I was like, next week, if you come back, let's talk about what you changed. But volunteer legal services, some of them are at major law firms and they bill out $500 an hour and you're getting them for free. So that's also an amazing opportunity.
Yeah, I think that's the right answer for sure. Because I mean, definitely lawyers, and as a former lawyer, I think I can say it. Sometimes we are completely unnecessary, but and we still charge anyway. But in a situation like this, if it can save you from a $17,000 bill, which by the way is not impossible. If you do it wrong, you definitely want to consult somebody. I think I have one more question on here that I see, and I want to make sure I get it to you. And then I think Angela's coming back. What percentage of businesses, and you may or may not know this, I don't know, we may all have a thought on this, but what percentage of businesses end up as C Corps and S Corps instead of staying as LLCs? Like in terms of, I guess this is more like a small business versus, scalable business question. Do you have any sense of it?
I don't have a percentage number in mind. I do know, though, that if I've worked with a lot of LLCs that we've wound up converting to C Corps, because they had this idea and they were just like, I don't know if this is venture backable. I'm going to form an LLC just to protect myself. Perfect. Then they're like, oh shit, Y Combinator likes me now. Okay, I'm the hot girl in school. So let me try to figure out what's going to appeal to this investor, right? And the investor going to be like, I don't want an LLC. I mean, I'll do it, but I don't want it. So give me a C Corp. I just want to make this quick and easy so that we'll convert it. It really depends on what your goals are. Like if you are an LLC now and you're going through life and you have investors who are coming and they're interested in taking membership units, that's completely fine. But if you're like, well, I want to attract these big investors, I want to attract the Harlem Capitals or the Collab Capitals or the Black Tech Nations, then you're going to be thinking, what?
Or the Chloe Capital.
Venture partners. If I am looking at these companies and they're like, nah, bro, we need a C Corp, then it's probably time to convert. But like, I wouldn't pressure myself with, I have an LLC now, I'm screwed. No, like you have time, you can work on this. This can happen at a later time. You don't need to hire somebody to convert your LLC.
Yeah, nice, good. Well, we've come to some kind of agreement, but I still might be filing the suit because it still looks so much like that Jumpman.
I mean, yours doesn't have a zipper and it's not all white, so I would. That's
a fair point. That's true. But is that distinct enough in purpose that I get a new patent? That you can get the new patent?
I mean, I would definitely get sued. Honestly, like that's why I said don't sue me in the beginning. This is just a case study. Like, I don't have the money.
No, that was really helpful. Thanks, Dana.
Yeah, this has been really great, Dea. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much for sharing. I feel like this could go on. There's so many like questions, detail that we could go into, but that just means we'll have to have a follow-up. So thanks so much, Mighty Co, for helping putting this together. You're phenomenal. We still love you over here, so come by sometime and say hi. And thanks also, Adam. It's always good to see you. So thanks everyone for joining us, and we'll see you later.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.